The race session is at FVR Townsville 400 Street Circuit in Townsville, Australia. Rene Robertson is first with 100 kilos on softs. Martijn Mol from Netherlands is second with 80 kilos on supers. John Astrop from New Zealand is P3 with 60 kilos. David Forsyth from Ireland is P4 with 20 kilos. Dominic Faubourg from United Kingdom is P5. Hein van Niekerk from Italy is P6 on softs. Dominic Singendonk from Netherlands is 7th. Kieran Cheng from Hong Kong is P8. Brian Patterson is P9 with 40 kilos on softs. Glenfield from United Kingdom is P9. Richard Ogden is P10. Rene Robertson is P1. Martijn Mol entering the pits is 20th. 45 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. David Forsyth is third. John Astrop is P4. Dominic Faubourg is P5. Martijn Mol exiting pits on softs. Dominic Faubourg lost P5 to Dominic Singendonk. Kieran Cheng is P7. Glenfield is P9. David Forsyth is third, 0.6 behind Hein van Niekerk. Glenfield is 9th, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. John Astrop is P4. Best lap is a 1:23.575. 2.784 off the fastest lap. Brian Patterson is 9, 0.4 behind Glenfield. John Astrop from New Zealand is P4, 0.5 behind David Forsyth. Dominic Singendonk is 5th, 0.4 behind John Astrop. Glenfield is 9th, 0.1 behind Brian Patterson. Richard Ogden entering the pits is P11. John Astrop is P4 with 60 kilos, 0.6 behind David Forsyth. Glenfield on lap 3 is 9, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Richard Ogden exiting pits. John Astrop is 4th, 0.7 behind David Forsyth. John Astrop passed David Forsyth for 3rd. Dominic Singendonk is P5, 0.3 behind David Forsyth. Glenfield is P9, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Minutes remaining in the session. Brian Patterson is 8th with 40 kilos, 0.3 ahead of Glenfield. Glenfield is 8th, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson was 1.4 faster last lap. Dominic Singendonk exiting pits. Brian Patterson is P7. Best lap is a 1:15.723. 1.562 off the fastest lap. Kieran Chen is P5, 0.8 behind Dominic Bobard. Brian Patterson on lap 5 is 7th, 0.4 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is P5, 0.5 behind Dominic Bobard. Glenfield is P8, 0.3 behind David Forsyth. David Forsyth from Ireland is 7th, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson was 0.6 faster last lap. Glenfield is 8th, 0.3 behind David Forsyth. Hein van Niekerk is P2, 0.5 behind Rene Robertson. Brian Patterson is 6th, 0.9 behind Kieran Chen. Dominic Singendonk on lap 7 is P9, 0.5 behind Glenn Field. Hein van Niekerk is P2, 0.9 behind Rene Robertson. Dominic Singendonk is P9, 0.5 behind Glenn Field. Dominic Singendonk was 0.6 faster last lap. David Forsyth on lap 8 is P7, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Glenn Field is 8th, 0.3 ahead of Dominic Singendonk. 35 minutes remaining in the session. Dominic Singendonk is P9, 0.5 behind Glenn Field. Hein van Niekerk is P2, 0.3 behind Rene Robertson. David Forsyth is P7, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. David Forsyth lost P7 to Glenn Field. Dominic Singendonk is 9th, 0.3 behind David Forsyth. Brian Patterson on lap 9 is P6, 0.5 behind Hein van Niekerk. Brian Patterson is now 5th. Richard Ogden entering the pits is 11th. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 0.7 behind Glenn Field. Hein van Niekerk entering the pits is P9. Kieran Chen from Hong Kong is 4th, 0.6 behind Dominic Favard. Hein van Niekerk exiting pits. Glenn Field is 6th, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Dominic Singendonk on lap 10 is P7, 0.5 behind Glenn Field. Glenn Field on lap 10 is P6, 0.2 behind Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson is 6th, 0.3 behind Glenfield. Glenfield was 0.6 faster last lap. Brian Patterson is now P5. Glenfield is 7th, 0.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Dominic Singendonk is P6, 0.5 behind Brian Patterson. Brian Patterson is 6th battling Dominic Singendonk. Brian Patterson passed Dominic Singendonk for P5. Dominic Singendonk is 6th, 0.2 behind Brian Patterson. Dominic Singendonk passed Brian Patterson for P5. Brian Patterson is P6 with 40 kilos, 0.1 behind Dominic Singendonk. Brian Patterson passed Dominic Singendonk for 5th. Dominic Singendonk is P6, 0.2 ahead of Glenfield. "30 minutes remaining in the session. Glenfield is P7, 0.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Dominic Singendonk is P6. Best lap is a 1:14.751. 0.590 off the fastest lap. David Forsyth is 8th, 0.9 behind Glenfield. Dominic Singendonk is P7, 0.4 behind Glenfield. David Forsyth is P8 with 20 kilos, 0.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Brian Patterson is P8, 0.2 behind David Forsyth. Brian Patterson was 1.0 faster last lap. Hein van Niekerk on lap 13 is 10th. Dominic Singendonk on lap 14 is P6, 0.3 behind Glenfield. Dominic Singendonk passed Glenfield for P5. Brian Patterson exiting pits. Glenfield is P6. Brian Patterson is P10, 1.2 behind Hein van Niekerk. Glenfield is P8. Best lap is a 1:15.712. 1.551 off the fastest lap. Brian Patterson is P10. Best lap is a 1:14.933. 0.772 off the fastest lap. Glenfield is 8th, 1.6 behind Martijn Mol. Brian Patterson is 10th. Glenfield on lap 16 is 8th, 1.9 behind Martijn Mol. "25 minutes remaining in the session. Dominic Faubourg is P4, 2.0 behind Kieran Chen. Brian Patterson is P10 with 40 kilos, 2.1 behind Hein van Niekerk. Dominic Faubourg is 4th, 1.8 behind Kieran Chen. Dominic Faubourg was 0.8 faster last lap. Brian Patterson is 10th, 0.8 behind Hein van Niekerk. Brian Patterson passed Hein van Niekerk for P9. Kieran Chen is P3, 2.3 ahead of Dominic Faubourg. Glenfield is 8th, 2.8 behind Martijn Mol. Hein van Niekerk entering the pits is 10th. Kieran Chen is P3, 1.9 behind John Astrup. Hein van Niekerk exiting pits. Dominic Faubourg is 4th. Kieran Chen is third. Best lap is a 1:14.324. 0.308 off the fastest lap. David Forsyth is 6th, 2.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Dominic Singendonk is 6th. Dominic Singendonk entering the pits is 6th. Rene Robertson is 1st. Glenfield entering the pits is 8th. Brian Patterson is 9th with 40 kilos. Dominic Singendonk exiting pits. "20 minutes remaining in the session. Brian Patterson passed Glenfield for P8. Glenfield is P9. Glenfield exiting pits. Dominic Faubourg entering the pits is P4. Kieran Chen is 3rd, 1.5 behind John Astrup. Dominic Faubourg exiting pits. Hein van Niekerk is 10th. Kieran Chen is 3rd, 2.3 behind John Astrup. Martijn Mol is 5th on softs, 4.2 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is P3, 2.4 behind John Astrup. Martijn Mol is 5th, 4.7 behind David Forsyth. Glenfield is P9. Best lap is a 1:14.680. 0.681 off the fastest lap. David Forsyth entering the pits is P4. Kieran Chen exiting pits. Kieran Chen is 4th, 0.4 behind Martijn Mol. David Forsyth exiting pits. Dominic Singendonk on lap 23 is P7, 0.9 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is P4, 1.2 behind Martijn Mol. Dominic Singendonk is P7, 0.5 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is 4th. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 0.3 behind David Forsyth. John Astrup entering the pits is 2nd. Kieran Chen is 3rd, 1.2 behind Martijn Mol. John Astrup exiting pits. Kieran Chen is now P4. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 0.5 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is P4, 0.6 behind Martijn Mol. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 1.0 behind David Forsyth. Dominic Bobarg is P5, 0.5 behind Martijn Mol. Martijn Mol entering the pits is P4. Dominic Bobarg passed Martijn Mol for 4th. Martijn Mol exiting pits. Martijn Mol is P7, 1.4 behind Dominic Singendonk. Rene Robertson entering the pits is P1. Glenfield on lap 26 is P9, 1.6 behind Brian Patterson. Glenfield was 0.9 faster last lap. Rene Robertson exiting pits. Martijn Mol is 7th, 1.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Dominic Singendonk was 18.9 faster last lap. Glenfield is P9, 1.1 behind Brian Patterson. Martijn Mol is 7, 0.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Glenfield is 9, 0.5 behind Brian Patterson. Martijn Mol is 7, 0.8 behind Dominic Singendonk. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Glenfield is P9, 0.6 behind Brian Patterson. Martijn Mol from Netherlands is P7, 0.5 behind Dominic Singendonk. Glenfield is P9, 0.5 behind Brian Patterson. Dominic Singendonk is 7, 0.3 behind Martijn Mol. Glenfield is P9, 0.4 behind Brian Patterson. Dominic Singendonk is 7, 0.5 behind Martijn Mol. Brian Patterson entering the pits is P8. Hein van Niekerk is P10, 2.0 behind Glenfield. Hein van Niekerk passed Glenfield for P9. Glenfield entering the pits is P10. Hein van Niekerk passed Brian Patterson for 8th. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 1.4 behind Martijn Mol. Martijn Mol on lap 30 is 6th, 2.0 behind David Forsyth. Brian Patterson exiting pits. Glenfield exiting pits. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 2.4 behind Martijn Mol. Martin Mole is 6th, 0.8 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is 3rd, 3.5 behind John Astrup. Martin Mole is P6, 0.4 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen on lap 32 is P3, 4.1 behind John Astrup. Five minutes remaining in the session. Martin Mole is 6th, 0.5 behind David Forsyth. Kieran Chen is P3, 4.8 behind John Astrup. Martin Mole is 6th. Best lap is a 1:13.501. Kieran Chen from Hong Kong is 3rd, 4.3 behind John Astrup. David Forsyth is 6th battling Martin Mole. Glenfield is P10. David Forsyth from Ireland is 6th, 2.0 behind Martin Mole. Dominic Singendonk is 7th, 3.1 behind David Forsyth. Brian Patterson is 9th, 0.1 ahead of Glenfield. David Forsyth is P6, 2.9 behind Martin Mole. Glenfield is 10th. David Forsyth is 6th, 3.2 behind Martijn Mol. Dominic Faubourg is P4. Best lap is a 1:14.258. 0.757 off the fastest lap. David Forsyth on lap 36 is P6, 3.8 behind Martijn Mol. Rene Robertson is first. David Forsyth is 6th with 20 kilos, 4.4 behind Martijn Mol. The leader has just finished the race. Rene Robertson finished first. John Astrup finished second. Kieran Cheng finished third. Brian Patterson finished ninth. Dominic Faubourg finished fourth. Glenfield finished P10. Hein van Niekerk finished 8th. Martijn Mol finished 5th. David Forsyth finished 6th. Dominic Singendonk finished P7.